I think this is fake.
You think it's fake?
What's that? Is that fake?
For decades, WWE lived by one golden rule: protect the business at all costs. This meant don't break character. Never admit the truth.
Thing is not for real, is it?
That feel fake, huh? Does that feel fake?
And never let the audience behind the curtain.
Hey, the on here.
But that rule is now shattered with the release of WWE's new documentary. There are clips of Triple H with the writing staff, John Cena rehearsing, and even a production member saying that Cody was just selling this spot. This documentary outright exposes wrestling's biggest secrets. We are witnessing the end of kayfabe. It is crumbling before our very eyes, and this time it's not the fans or the dirt sheets doing the damage, it is WWE themselves. I absolutely despise every piece of this documentary. It needs to be canceled, and the WWE needs to do everything in their power to protect kayfabe, because
it's still real to me, damn it!
What is kayfabe, and why do I think it's one of the most important inventions in wrestling history? To answer that, we gotta hop in a time machine all the way back to the 1800s. This was long before WrestleMania, before Hulkamania, and before steel chairs and 5-star matches. This was a time when there was dirt, blood, and bare knuckles. Wrestling in the 19th century America was not entertainment. It started with townsfolk settled grudges mixed with placed bets. But everything changed after the Civil War. When the war ended, soldiers returned home, and with them came combat skills that they acquired. Many of them knew how to grapple, how to choke, and how to throw a man twice their size. These soldiers quickly saw this as an opportunity. These were the original hustlers. They'd put on what looked like legitimate fights, but secretly, they were working together, the matches were predetermined, and the goal was not to win, it was actually to scam towns out of their money. And that was the birth of kayfabe. Kayfabe isn't just a wrestling term, it's the entire soul of the business. It's the unspoken agreement between the performer and the audience. Because if fans ever found out it was fake, then the money would stop rolling in. The fame would vanish and the illusion would crumble. Think about a magician. Without his secrets, is he even a magician? And that's the same thing with kayfabe. Without it, is wrestling still wrestling? No. Therefore, wrestling started to spread. The characters became larger than life. Kayfabe was king. Fans believed in the business. Wrestlers were box office names, and the business was thriving. Things were going great, but just like every empire, cracks were beginning to form, and in this story, that crack had a name. The first man to destroy kayfabe was a salty, vengeful New York promoter named Jack Pfeffer. Winners of wrestling matches in New York City and environs at least are decided before the contestants enter the ring, and the grunting and groaning and wild acrobatics staged therein are merely an act. That was a real quote printed in a New York newspaper in 1934, and it came straight from the mouth of Jack Pfeffer. This would instantly turn him into wrestling's biggest traitor. So why did he do it? It was simple. He wanted to get revenge and regain power. Pfeffer was losing control, so he lit a match and burned the entire business to the ground. His expose revealed all the secrets. People were now aware of the fact that wrestling was predetermined, choreographed, and phony. And honestly, this expose would be the beginning of the end for kayfabe. By the late 1950s, the business had a new enemy, and his name was Dan Parker. He wasn't a promoter, he was not a wrestler, he was a columnist, but not just any columnist. He was one of New York's most popular sports writer, and he made it his personal mission to bury professional wrestling. He called it a low-class cartoon, a carnival con, and famously said the only thing real in wrestling is the sweat. He repeatedly drilled the idea into the mainstream public that wrestling was fake, and no matter how much the promoters hated him, they couldn't couldn't stop him. With every column, kayfabe cracked a little more. But then came 1984 and things got even worse for kayfabe, because that's when John Stossel walked onto your TV screen with this 2020 that really hurt the industry. The title of the episode was Is Pro Wrestling Fake? And he did not hold back whatsoever. Stossel called wrestling a con, he demonstrated blading and exposed how wrestlers intentionally cut themselves for the effect of blood, and there were even segments of him asking wrestlers if wrestling was fake, which actually led to him getting slapped by David Schultz, and I would say that was well deserved. And then we get to Vince McMahon. In 1989, Vince McMahon voluntarily went to the New Jersey State Senate and made a bold claim. He said professional wrestling is not a sport, it is sports entertainment. He didn't confess that professional wrestling was fake, but he did need a loophole to avoid expensive athletic commission regulations. Therefore, he reframed wrestling as sports entertainment, and you've got to at least somewhat respect the fact that he tried to respect kayfabe and the business and not flat out just call it fake. At this point though, kayfabe took a lot of damage, but it still limped on until 1996, because that year something happened that shattered the illusion more than ever before. A moment caught on camera in front of a live crowd in the world's most famous arena. A moment so controversial that it wasn't just a break in kayfabe, but it was actually the worst thing to ever happen to kayfabe, and I would even argue and say that it was the final nail on kayfabe's coffin.
In case everybody doesn't know, in 1996, they thought Hunter Hearst Helmsley is the hot young rookie we've got. We want to elevate him. The King of the Ring winner usually gets elevated.
So it would have been a huge, what we would call push for me in the business.
Like,
right? It just would have really been the thing that launched me.
When Hall and Nash were leaving in April of 96.
Sean and I are staying. It's their last time at Madison Square Garden. They're leaving shortly thereafter. And Sean comes to me during the day and he's like, hey, I mentioned something to Vince about us all going out at the end of the show and having a moment together.
Then they all go out and hug, baby faces and heels. Fans, there's no internet. People don't know they're leaving. They don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They just felt that they needed to hug.
The Garden sold out and they go ballistic.
So the people are happy to see you all acknowledge that you are friends and break the
It's
kayfabe.
this crazy moment, right? Like it's this crazy moment of like, most people I believe in that time, probably in the Garden, especially New York, is so savvy to everything. Like they know we're all friends, they get it, right? And they know they're leaving. And this is like an incredible, real life moment.
First time in wrestling history this has happened, where you kind of break.
Probably
that's my understanding.
One of the big moments where it actually happens.
And it was just bullshit. They took a whether you like Vince McMahon or not. Madison Square Garden was his building at the time. It was his father's building. He viewed that as his house. And they went out and took a on the business in Vince's dining room, right on his table. So Hunter Hearst Helmsley got spanked. He didn't win the King of the Ring. It cost him about $150,000 or $200,000 that year.
I'm like,
He was told to go around to all the boys and apologize for what he did. And he should have.
She said, you are going to have to learn to eat platefuls of and like the taste of it.
And everybody thinks, oh, it's goddamn, as quaint as it seems to look back now. No, he took a on the business. He exposed the business. Vince McMahon had done it, but it was his business. There was no reason for the boys, for their own self-serving motivation, to go out there and do that. There was no storyline purpose to it. It didn't sell any tickets, didn't do anything for business, did something for their egos. Helmsley goes around to every single member of the crew and apologizes. He realizes what he did was wrong.
And I said, if what we did was so bad, then why was the largest or the loudest reaction of the entire night what we did?
And Helmsley reveals all along, which I figured, that he wasn't genuine when he was apologizing.
If what we did was so bad, isn't our job to entertain those people that all paid? I guarantee you the one thing they left there saying is, holy shit, at the end they all came out, it was this moment, it was real, right?
He just did it because he was told to and it was political, and he really knew that he was doing something to revolutionize the business.
Like I said, the business is changing and we're either gonna change with it or it's gonna pass us by. And he sat there for a second and he said, you might be right, but right now isn't the moment.
So here we are, just days before the release of WWE Unreal, the documentary that's about to officially leave kayfabe behind. This is the crossroads. You've got one side with guys like Triple H and The Rock who break the illusion in press conferences, podcasts, and interviews, because to them, everyone already knows it's scripted, so what's the harm? Then you've got the other side with the old school mentality with guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin, CM Punk, and The Undertaker. These are guys who still believe the business deserves mystique, that what they do is worth protecting. And honestly, when you look through the history of wrestling, there's one undeniable truth. The more kayfabe got destroyed, the more wrestling suffered. Because when fans stop believing, they stop caring. It's as simple as that. That is why Unreal isn't just another documentary, it's the final step towards killing all of the magic. It's going to do some real irreversible damage to the business. With less magic, there will be less of a spectacle, and that'll lead to less care and eventually less viewers. I don't want to sit there and watch Triple H and the entire company talk about upcoming storylines like they're reviewing a Marvel script. That is not wrestling, that's corporate cosplay. Just imagine telling a kid that Santa isn't real. Why would you do that? What is the benefit of stripping away belief for the sake of transparency and content? You're not being honest or revolutionary, you're actually being reckless. If anything, we need to double down on kayfabe, bring back wrestlers who live their gimmick on talk shows, make fans question everything again, and blur the lines so well that people forget where the performance ends and the reality begins. But sadly, I don't think that's ever going to happen, because all you have to do is look at the two men running WWE who just don't care about kayfabe. One of them was part of the biggest break in kayfabe history, and the other is a Hollywood megastar who lives for the behind-the-scenes content. So why should we expect them to have a change of heart? With that said, I don't think Triple H and The Rock truly understand what they're doing to this business. And if they don't course correct now, if they don't restore that sense of magic, then one day we'll all look around and realize that professional wrestling didn't go out in flames, it quietly tapped out behind the curtain.